Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. Had a great Super Bowl. It went almost exactly as I outlined on the show, Matt. The Niners didn't get the early lead. It took a little bit longer for them to get their lead, but I would say a double-digit lead qualifies for my prediction last week. You go ahead, they get the lead, Chiefs come back, and they pull away at the end. It didn't take much. They didn't have the lead for very long, but I would also say a double-digit win is pulling away. I also predicted Damian Williams, dude, having a hell of a game. Should have been MVP. Should have been MVP. I don't know how they gave it to Mahomes. I had my stats here for my guy. I told you he was going to have a killer game. He had a great week 17 and a couple other playoff game appearances, and it looks like he's going to be the Chiefs' number one. Putting him on my list now. Do I keep him for fantasy football? I think I have him for $30 or something like that. So definitely a steal if he's going to be rated as the Chiefs' number one running back. He had to do that to me. I knew it was going to happen. And I feel bad for him that he got snubbed. So they had Mahomes. Mahomes only threw for an average of 6.8 yards. Awful. I mean, he was horrible. He had so many overthrows. A lot of people said that his greatest throw was that deep one where he kind of rolled out, broke the tackle, and hit Hill deep on that third down. That wasn't even a great throw. That was underthrown. If he hits him in stride, that was most likely a touchdown. So his best throw of the game was still garbage. On the other hand, Williams, he averaged 6.1 yards rushing a carry for 104 yards. He had another 29 receiving on 4 catches, I believe, a receiving touchdown and a rushing touchdown. He had the go-ahead touchdown with like 2 minutes left on the reception, a short yardage play, and then he had the breakaway run to seal the game, put him up 2 scores. So MVP in my book. I knew he was going to have a big game, and I'm glad to finally see that happen for him as he battled some injuries this year after all the Kareem Hunt stuff. Man, just imagine Kareem Hunt, if he wasn't doing idiotic things in that hotel, he would have been on a Super Bowl team. He screwed up his entire thing.
Consequences.
Yeah, consequences, big time. That could have been him. I mean, Sammy Watkins said that he might not even sign. That since they won the Super Bowl, he might just take a year and relax. I don't blame him.
Well, yeah, it's the first year in his entire career that he made it without being injured. So it makes sense.
Hey, don't knock him. He played the most consistent out of any of their players on the Chiefs offense besides Williams.
Well, he should. He's most injury prone as well.
But he had an awesome game. Take a year off, relax. Andy Reid doesn't look like he's going to retire. I thought that he might, but I think he looks at their lineup and sees that most of the roster is back next year. I think Sammy Watkins is the only one that's in negotiations. Why not try to go for a John Elway two-peat? Retire after that.
I think it's plausible, and there would definitely be a wide receiver that if Sammy Watkins walked, you could definitely find a replacement wide receiver in the draft. I mean, even though they're drafting last, they could find someone to replace him and not even miss a beat.
Matt, they already have a guy that fits their team. Gets arrested, has trouble with the law, domestic violence disputes. You know who I'm talking about.
He's ready to sign. He's admitted that he's cleaning thing up. It was a mistake.
Dude, Antonio Brown's out there. I saw some stuff about the Madden curse because he was on the cover last year and Patrick Mahomes is on this year. Mahomes broke the curse.
I think Brown broke the curse because he was so jacked up that the Madden curse was like, all right, enough's enough.
Hey, I don't even know if he comes back, but a lot of people are reaching out to him to get him mental help. And that's something that is overlooked. I mean, if you look at Delonte West with his issues and then DJ Carlton from the Ohio State basketball team, he actually stepped away, a highly recruited player, stepped away this season to try to get some mental health help. And so that's something that you hate to see a player go through, but it's encouraging to see players having the confidence to actually go and get help if they need it, because you don't want to see them in the news for doing something crazy off the field. And I mean, could Antonio Brown have a redemption story? I don't know. But looking at Andy Reid, what are your thoughts on him and his coaching career? Do you think he's a lock for the Hall of Fame?
Oh my God, yeah. Yes. I thought a lot about this recently. But first I want to circle back to your MVP point. I do agree with you, but I think the precedent has been set a couple seasons ago where with the MVP, it pretty much at this point goes to the game's winning quarterback. There really seems to be where if it's going to be someone other than the quarterback, the performance has to just be in an absolute crazy place. And not taking away from the performance that Williams had in the Super Bowl, but I think it has to almost be he completely took the game over. Otherwise, they're going to give it to the quarterback. Just like the MVP award at this point pretty much goes to the player that has the most production on their team.
Well, Matt, I hate to point this out, but you're spewing some fake news because I thought the same thing, but that's recency bias. Because if you go back through, Julian Edelman won a recent MVP as a wide receiver. He didn't even have a touchdown in that game, I believe. A couple defenders, including Von Miller, went out there, and that they gave it to Von Miller over Peyton Manning. So it really comes down to if you would have said, if you're a quarterback and you're in a bunch of State Farm commercials, then I would agree with you. Because Aaron Rodgers set that precedent that you can get the MVP. At least I believe he won an MVP just for doing that. And then you have guys like Russell Wilson. He never got one. Ben Roethlisberger never got one. I feel like they give it to a couple receivers, or in my point, a running back hasn't gotten it for since Terrell Davis? Is that over 20 years ago? I believe he was the last one. So in my point, if they don't give it to a quarterback, they're going to find a receiver, someone flashy that I think a lot of fans know, or a big-time defender like Von Miller that they're marketing a bunch. So your point's not wrong. They're going to go out and find a marketable player to give it to. They're not going to give it to Williams that our podcast talks about and probably no one else. Like, let's be honest. You have to be a guy that watches football and knows the roster to even really know who he is and why he was such a big deal going into that game. Because they tried three things. They brought in LaShawn McCoy. He was cutting carries the entire season. Didn't play in the Super Bowl, from what I remember. And then they had the other Williams. Darrell Williams, I believe was his name. He came in and he was the third string. He filled in when McCoy was injured. I don't know if he's even back yet. But you had Damian Williams that was supposed to be the number one finally step up on the biggest game. Over 6 yards a carry. That's crazy. I mean, just looking on the other hand, look at what the 49ers did. They are a run-first team. Shanahan didn't run at the end of the game once again.
No. That was so ridiculous.
Matt, it's dumb. He did it twice. 2 Super Bowls, he had double-digit leads in the fourth quarter. At least I think the other one was in the fourth quarter because that was a ridiculous blown game too. He didn't run the ball. I did a count. He had 13 passing plays, 4 rushing plays, and I think one of the rushes was a scramble, and Garoppolo got like 3 yards. Dumb. The one was a first down 5-yard run. You're trying to milk the clock. Why are you not running on 2nd and 5? Instead, he threw, it was supposed to be a short crossing pattern, and it got tipped down at the line. So the pass got knocked down. And then I was thinking, okay, now you just took yourself out. You got 5 yards of carry. Your team's known for running, and you're going to throw 13 passes. Someone said, oh, well, they were behind in the fourth quarter. Hell no, they weren't. They had a double-digit lead. Yeah, whenever you run 3 passes in a row and then have to punt it, yeah, it seems like you're down. But what are you doing? Run the ball 3 times. It wasn't like they were going to stop you. Do that run around that they did a couple of times before that. They ran the other rookie out of the backfield. I can't remember his name now. The guy from South Carolina. They had him on the end around like 4 times for like double-digit runs, at least I remember. Maybe not as much as 10 yards, but the Chiefs weren't stopping that. They were loaded up in the box. I don't know what they were thinking, but that was some of the dumbest play calling I've ever seen. How you can go from a 20-point, that was a 20-point swing, Matt.
Well, and I'll take earlier in the game, they had a chance to get the ball back with like a minute and 40. They had it with like a minute and 40 seconds and 3 timeouts, and they did nothing at halftime and took the tied ball game into halftime. I think if you're a little bit aggressive, maybe you try to drive the ball down the field, use your timeouts effectively, and possibly get a field goal that puts you up going into half. So that when you get the ball at the start of the second half, it sets that table for you to pour that lead on a little bit more.
Well, we can talk about before the half, because I had some gripes on this that actually go in the 49ers' favor. That was not a push-off. I mean, it looked like a push-off, but I'm going to be consistent in my ruling because we had this before on the show in another playoff game. The defender never turned around. So whenever he's out there hand fighting, I don't think that they should throw a push-off flag during a hand fighting battle. The guy was burnt. There was already separation. Otherwise, he would have turned around and tried to knock the ball down. He couldn't make a play on the ball because he was already burnt. You're telling me that he extended his arm? Okay, bullshit. Of course he extended his arm. But did the defender turn his head around? No, he didn't. He was completely burnt. It was a hell of a pass, and it blew it. They blew the call to me. I know a lot of people were like, well, that's the definition of the rule. There's a lot of definitions of the rule that they don't care about in the NFL. So you're doing all this. Remember whenever Jesse James had that touchdown that they overturned because he didn't make a football play, even though he turned and stretched for the end zone, which is a football play? Like, don't give me that bullshit that, oh, that was, by the definition, a pass interference. No, it wasn't. The defender was not in a play. So did you throw the flag on him? Because in the NFL, you can't face guard. Because that's my biggest gripe with that stupid penalty. You can't have one because then it would have been a penalty on the defender then. And I'll argue that to the death, Matt. Because the guy was in poor position. There was no reason they should have thrown that flag. The space was already there. And like I said, if he turns around, the same exact thing I argued last time. If he tries to turn around and Kittle pushes off, it's going to look even crazier because he's going to probably fall off balance and fall down. And then it would look like a clear offensive pass interference. But to me, they're just hand battling. How is the defender hand battling with him when the receivers turned the entire way around and then the defender's facing him? Like, it was just a ridiculous penalty. I don't think they should have called it. And even before that, I don't know what they were doing with the timeouts. I think you mentioned that. Like, what are you doing?
I thought they could have managed those timeouts better. It just felt like they were just kind of settling. And it's like, you can't, looking back at the experience that you had a couple Super Bowls ago, you can't take your foot off the gas that early in the game. It's like, come on, you got to keep going. You got to score. But, I will say this in the second half. For as much as they want to give Shanahan a hard time about the way that the game ended, both Super Bowls, he's not the defensive coordinator in that. At some point, there has to be the defensive coordinator and the defensive staff. You got to figure out a way to get a stop. You can't just let them drive down the field with the game on the line. You can't. They stayed in the same coverage, and they stayed with the same calls throughout the game, and it looked like they really didn't make a lot of adjustments. As soon as Kansas City went with their up tempo, San Francisco didn't have an answer for it.
I think a lot of that, I would say, isn't really on the defense, because I think there was a time when the 49ers let the play clock run all the way down before they punted it. I think their defense was tired. They were on the field when your offense has like 4 or 5 3-and-outs in the last 15 minutes of the game, Matt. When is your defense going to get a break? When I saw that, I made a note of that down into my notes for the show because I said that they're trying to give their defense a breather, and they're done. They lost this game. And I think it was pretty clear after that because to the point of the defense, we talked about that throw earlier that was underthrown. Like, that was a crazy play. The 49ers were in position on that. They had pressure. They had him. They just didn't wrap up. And then the throw's complete. They still struggled to get into the end zone. It took that pass to Williams out of the backfield to give the Chiefs the lead. The 49ers have to do something on offense. Instead, they do nothing, turn the ball over, and the Chiefs have the ball in their own almost, I don't think they were near the red zone, but that's the play where tired defense lets Williams break a 30-yard run. Game over at that point. The offense has to do something on one of those two drives. I don't see how that's on the defense. You expect it to be in a shootout. The defense did everything they could. They held the Chiefs to like 20-something points at that point in the game. If the offense does something, the Chiefs never... What was the final score? Did they break 30? I can't even remember what the final score was, but I know that they came down and had a chance to have it be a classic shootout, and the offense didn't do anything. So at some point, you're an offensive-minded coach. You can't have that many 3-and-outs. You can't have a play or a drive where you get a 5-yard run on a first play, get the ball knocked down, and then you end up punting. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Why are you not running more time off the clock? What are you doing? You already had this happen with the Falcons. This was your redemption story.
Do you think that the final ended up being 31-20?
Yeah, that's what I thought it was.
Did San Francisco let Kansas City score that go-ahead touchdown late?
I was wondering that at the time, but then I also thought if they hold them to a field goal, then they're only down a touchdown, right, at that point?
Yeah.
So I don't think they did. I think it was a situation where they were just gassed. They had all three timeouts. It
was 24-20 before they scored the go-ahead, so they were down. Kansas City was up 4.
Yeah, they were in field goal range, and I think the Niners had all three timeouts at that point. I don't think they let them score. I mean, you can check the timeout count, but I remember looking at that because I thought the same exact thing you did, but I thought that they went forward on fourth down because they had all three timeouts. They thought they could just hold them to a field goal, and then at least they're playing for overtime because I text that. We have some friends that bet on the game. So...
As for people that might be asking yourselves, why would you let that touchdown be the go-ahead? Well, at the time, even if you milk that clock down and you burn your timeouts, kicking that field goal still doesn't leave you with it gives you time, but you still don't have the timeout, so it restricts what calls you can make. A lot of your calls are like you can't call plays that are into the middle of the field because the clock's going to keep running. So by letting them score, even though it turns it into a 2-score game, if you get the ball back and you can score quickly, you set yourself up for the possibility of getting the onside kick and drive them back down. So to me, when they scored it as quickly as they did, that go-ahead touchdown, I thought that has to be one of those let them score so that we can get the ball back and possibly have an answer.
I would originally agree with you, but like I said, if they hold them there, it's a one-score game. Then you don't have to worry about the onside kick. I know you might not have as much time, but you can get Kittle or someone in the end zone hoping for a jump ball touchdown. You might be able to have enough time because it would have been a minute or something left if they had all their timeouts. Like it wouldn't have been like 5 seconds left or something like that where you would let that happen. Because like I said, I thought the same exact thing, but I wrote down that I think that they just blew it. I think their defense was tired. I think that they didn't get off the field. They tried to get a rush. They didn't get a push, and that was it. They weren't expected the weak side. I think it was a weak side handoff that he cut back to the outside, and he was gone. So you're looking at that in the game, and you're wondering what just happened. At that point, the game was over. Andy Reid was celebrating on the sideline. And for a guy that was as innovative on offense, I mean, he went pass first. I really liked that. I just didn't like the fact that he was on the Eagles, and I'm glad that he never won a Super Bowl with the Eagles. So he finally gets one in Kansas City. I really don't care about the Chiefs either way. But I will say, I know this dumbass that had a bet on the 49ers and the over. He lost both of those. Right after listening to our show, Matt, when I told him, Chiefs, the over didn't hit, which was close. And I think that's why I was saying that you're looking at, okay, if they can get a touchdown here, it goes to overtime. They might have hit the over. Because I was texting Jeff, I think he was talking about taking the over too. And so then I was looking at the actual line. What scenario would it take for that to hit? Another one that's crazy that I saw broke a lot of bets. People were betting on Mahomes' rushing total. and he took the knee from the shotgun. So he lost, I think they said he lost 15 yards on that final drive, and he hit the under on that by 2. So could you imagine like that you're watching your guy take a knee and shotgun, or he was running back. I don't know what exactly it was, but I think they said each one was a negative 5 yard. 5 yard rush for each kneel down. And he went from being like 13 yards over to -2. And he hit the under, and it broke like a ton of bets in Vegas's favor. So do you think someone told him to take a few steps back before kneeling down?
That's conspiracy theorist. I would say probably not.
I think you mean yes. They probably did tell him. He probably had a bet. They're like, hey, we'll give you a cut of this if you go 5 yards back. Each of these kneel downs will work out perfect for us.
But I will say at this point, when you're the coach and you've won as many games as Andy Reid has, go ahead and fit him for that jacket and go ahead and get that bus ready because he'll be going to Canton.
And he'll be coaching a few more years. I thought it was going to be more of a swan song, but it looks like he's excited. He's not crazy by any means. I did see a stat where he's the third coach from Lavelle Edwards' BYU staff to win a Super Bowl, which I thought was crazy. I think that was the BYU staff that won the national championship game over Michigan in 1984. So that's crazy that a small school like BYU out west had 3 coaches on their staff that went on to win the Super Bowl. So remember, that was the guy, we had a story on him where someone had a wax statue of him made or something, and they had it in their house. I'm going to see if I can find that. I'm going to send it to you. I know that. I know that's a real thing. Let's get off the football. Well, let's stick with the Super Bowl, but off the football. The NFL 100. They did this before the game. I hated it. I was so confused. I knew they did like their 100-year all-time team, but let's be real. There were a lot more recent players than they were players from 100 years ago. Because you're having Randy Moss and all these other people. Because I thought, I'm watching the game, everyone's like, what are they showing here? Super Bowl winners? I'm like, well, no, because there's Barry Sanders. I don't even think he ever played in the Super Bowl. So it can't be winners. Oh, yeah, there's Randy Moss, so it's not winners. And then I was thinking, is it Hall of Fame guys? But then I saw some guys that I knew were too young to be in the Hall of Fame. And I had no idea. Like, I was like, Tom Brady's not in the Hall of Fame. He will be. But he's still playing, so I don't know what this is. But instead, they showed, for their 100-year celebration, just random players. And then even on the screen, Matt, they just showed, like, the names, and then they, like, had a picture of them. Like, I had no idea what was going on. I thought that was the dumbest start to the Super Bowl that they could have had. Like, I would have liked them. I would have rather have seen little tidbits of each NFL championship team going all the way back before the Super Bowl, like through the years, so that you could see how the game changed over time. Like, start with 1920 or whatever the year was, and then work your way up and just show like little clips and then like the MVP from those or something else. And then do your NFL 100 for some other show. It was very like, what's that website, BuzzFeed, where they do like the lists? That's what that reminded me of. Like, which NFL all-time player are you? Take this questionnaire, Matt, and we'll tell you if you're Barry Sanders or if you're Tom Brady. I didn't like it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I had heard some of the discussions, and I think it's one of those deals where during the Super Bowl, what I don't think was the best time to showcase that. I think if you're highlighting the teams, if you're highlighting the MVPs of those championship teams, I like that a lot more because the Super Bowl is celebrating the best team of that year. So I mean, to me, it makes more sense to celebrate that. And the individual players, that's more of like you said, that would have been a good conversation piece to have during that Pro Bowl week in the middle. Where if you're going to do the Pro Bowl, then you're going to announce, like, you can have that announced during that time and not have like the weird overlap.
I would even have liked them to focus more on it during the year. Like, have each player from each team. I mean, you could have had a different one at each game or something like, hey, here's Terry Bradshaw. He made the NFL 100 during a Super Bowl game, or not during a Super Bowl, but during like a regular season Steelers game, and have him just give an interview or just be there, like associated with the team, so that you can kind of show like, hey, young fans, these are some of the all-time great Steelers you might not have heard of. Or like so-and-so to try to get, because I'm more for like trying to get people attached to their team or their city. And the way the NFL and social media and stuff are, there's really no point in you cheering for your local team. You just pick which team's probably good. There's probably a lot of Patrick Mahomes fans, and they're just going to cheer for the Chiefs no matter where they live. When he retires, are they going to find another player to cheer for, or are they just going to give up on sports altogether? Because I think that's what the problem is. A lot of these diehard like fans of teams, they don't really exist anymore. You're more fans of the players. You see it in the NBA, where they can't get anyone to watch teams that don't feature LeBron or Steph Curry or some other big name star. No one will watch the game. So you're kind of like, oh, okay. What are we going to do for like the NFL? They can't show the same teams all the time. I mean, you put on a Jets game, that's it. No one's going to watch. Put on a Browns game, people get hyped for Baker Mayfield, but do they still tune in after they lose the first 4 games or whatever, like each year? I don't know. So I don't know how they could have approached it. I think they could have done some of the players, they could have done better by them. Because like the way they did that, there's no way you could have read all the names. I still don't know who's all on the team. I don't know what Steelers all made it. I didn't look it up. I just looked it up to see if Terry Bradshaw made it, so I had an example. But like everyone else, like I don't know. Just people I recognize. I'm not going to recognize everyone. I would have rather had them show like little highlights of like different players from different eras or from the same team or whatever, and just interview them during the game even. Like, hey, there's one of our 38 commercial breaks. Instead, we're going to show a group of Lions here. Here's Barry Sanders and so-and-so and so-and-so. And then they just like talk a little bit, and then you kind of get to know them. Instead of just having them wave and put that red jacket on or whatever they had on.
Well, all those guys have CTE now, so they probably don't want to give them the open mic and then end up damaging their reputation.
Coach, I thought you didn't believe in CTE.
Oh, yeah, everyone has CTE. When you played outside as a kid, CTE. I
know you were a fan. What about the halftime show?
It was one of my favorite things to watch people get up in arms about it. Because you didn't see the same kind of backlash when Adam Levine from Maroon 5 was out with his shirt off. And no one raised any issue about it. But this one, there were all kinds of people just losing their minds. But if that's not the halftime show you were anticipating, here's a novel idea. You can turn the channel. You can put something else on and then come back when the rest of the game's on. If that wasn't something that you enjoyed. But how in your right mind can you say, oh, it's Shakira and J-Lo, and not think that they're not going to be dancing at some point in their act?
Well, I will say this. I didn't even recognize Shakira. I thought she looked totally different. So that kind of messed up my psyche watching that performance. And then I was thinking, do I know these songs at all? But then you texted me about how people were getting offended by it. And I thought, oh my gosh, should I feel bad here? Because that never even crossed my mind. I never thought that there was anything offensive about it. And then looking back at it, I thought, wow, this must be how those Kansas fans felt at Midnight Madness when Snoop Dogg had those strippers. You have some of the players there that are just like, what's wrong? Why is everyone upset? Like, I thought this was fun. So that's what I thought about it after. I thought it could be manufactured a little bit. They had the Janet Jackson nipple slip a few years ago, probably like a decade now. Probably even longer than that, actually, if I think about it. But there were some rumors that was kind of faked. Not so much the actual nipple slip, but they wanted like a wardrobe malfunction to try to get people to talk about it. Like some people thought that was actually baked into her outfit for the strap to break or whatever. And then not obviously to fall all the way off. And so I thought, well, this is a perfect way to get people to talk without having to risk any of that by having all these dancers. I thought it was really weird. I didn't know what was going on for some of the dancing. People were like crawling all over each other in that one scene. And I thought, did they practice that? Like, how many hours do you practice crawling on another person? And you're like, yeah, it looks good.
Well, funny that you say that, because as I was watching, I remember telling my wife, the person that produces the halftime show, how do you not have a heart attack in the middle of that? Just being like trying to coordinate all of those people and like the camera angles, and it's like shifting from one to the, like, that has to be like one of the most high anxiety jobs that there could possibly be.
Well, I figured they pre-taped it. Am I wrong in thinking that? I always thought that they pre-taped it. And then when you're at the game, you see a live version that if it's full of mess ups, who cares? You're probably not paid attention anyway. And so I just always assumed that they had those pre-taped. I could be wrong, but I would bet money that that's what they do. Because that's, like you said, that's too much production, too much stuff going in. The camera angle's always real low. You don't see the crowd. And even when they do show the crowd, they could honestly just cut to a live view of the stadium while still playing the pre-recorded music. And then that way you don't have to worry about lip syncs, because they might have actually sang it live the first time they performed it. So that was that's what I always thought. It wasn't like a pure Milli Vanilli where they were just out there faking it. I just thought they pre-taped it. So if they needed to do it 20 times, they did it 20 times, because with all that stuff and people actually playing like the live instruments and things like that with that short cutoff time, you get someone out there that's nervous or something, speed it up a little bit. Like, I feel like that there's no way they don't pre-tape it. That's just me.
Interesting.
So, I mean, I've done live performances. I've coordinated them in my life. I've done live events. I just feel like with all the production that goes into it, like you said, it's too risky to do it live, because it's not just the performers, it's the dancers. And they don't get paid a lot of money. It's almost like, that was another thing I was thinking, like, oh, those poor dancers, they're out there getting exploited. Because at one time they even talked about having people pay to perform. Like, you would if you were the artist, you would have to put in a bid to play. They weren't going to pay you to play that. They weren't going to pay you to dance. They wanted you to pay your own way in and then use that as exposure so that you could put on your resume that you danced at the halftime of the Super Bowl or whatever. I don't know if that actually happened, but that's the most ridiculous thing that it just sounds like it would be true. So, like, yeah, you're paying out there. There's no way they're going to let you do it live. Like, are you kidding? You got to pre-tape that. It's probably in the contract, like NDA. You can't say you will get to perform live, but that's not the one we'll see on TV. That's why I thought the nipple slip thing was already faked.
The nip slip.
I thought it was faked. I thought they pre-recorded it. And I mean, obviously I think maybe they pre-recorded the year after that. That might've been like the when they actually did it, because that was a pretty big fine that they got. Although maybe the fine was worth it. I don't know. It only takes one guy to be like, this is going to be good for publicity. Having a bunch of strippers out there. Yeah, that's going to get everyone talking about it. People aren't going to complain about how boring it is. They're just going to be like, what did I watch?
What just happened?
So, I mean, that's it. I got anything else for the Super Bowl? Those were the big notes I had.
No, I think we pretty much hit everything. But all in all, I did like with the NFL the way that they coordinate their time so that the Super Bowl ends and it's not midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. I wish that other major sporting events would take note of that, so that even though it's Super Bowl Sunday, you can still be functioning somewhat decently the next morning, as opposed to like when the college basketball finals or college football finals, that they feel like it has to start at 9 o'clock and then you're waiting till midnight, 1 o'clock till the game ends.
Well, the college ones, I understand why they try to make it later than 6 p.m. But like, you're right with basketball, that's a 2-hour game. Start that at 8. Like, give me a break. You do not have to start it at 9:30. because they say 9, it doesn't tip off till 9:30, 9:40, and then you're right, you're up till midnight. When they could very easily say, we're going to start production at 7:30, tip-offs at 8, 11 or something crazy, and then just do it till 10:30. Very easy. I know they do it on a weeknight, but there's no way people don't tune out of that game. I mean, there's just no way. I know they try to do it for the West Coast, but like the Super Bowl don't care. I mean, maybe what time would it have been on over there? 3?
Yeah.
2? I don't know how far out. What's Hawaii? How many hours are they behind? 5? We've been on at 1. I don't know. But for college, yeah, just do it. Or just move it like you had said. Put it on a Saturday. What else are you competing with? Like in April, what else is on a Saturday? NBA playoff games are on during the week anyway. Like just put it on a Saturday and do a big time thing. Maybe even do an NBA game leading into the championship game. If you're that worried about it. I mean, doesn't ABC pay for both? Oh, no, wait. I think CBS bought NCAA, so maybe that's why. They might have Unsolved Mysteries or something else to show on Saturday night, Matt. A rerun from 1992. You're watching and you're like, wait, what year is this from? Why is that guy driving a Ford Bronco? Let's get into Hall of Fame. Do we skip Bill Cowher? Did we mention? I think we talked about him making it. But yes. That makes 2 Steelers now. Bill Cowher was named as a coach in like the coaches and executive round a week or so ago. Yeah, I guess it was 3 weeks ago now. But they announced the players. Troy Polamalu made the Hall of Fame. Another Pittsburgh Steeler. Things have always been weird with him after he retired. But, I mean, everyone knew he was going to make the Hall of Fame. I mean, there was some animosity between the Steelers and him because he felt like they forced him to retire. And so he didn't talk to the team, didn't come around to a lot of team functions. I mean, I would imagine that's a lot of common knowledge. But good to see him make the Hall of Fame. Hopefully they mend some fences and have him start coming around some more because I think that would be a big boon for the franchise, getting him back in. In terms of the Hall of Fame, his induction makes USC now tied with Notre Dame for the most all-time, 13 in the NFL Hall of Fame. From those 2 universities, Steve Hutchinson made it, the offensive lineman. He pushed Michigan into a tie for 3rd with Ohio State at 10 inductees. So those are your top college programs that also have guys in the NFL Hall of Fame, which I think is a big selling point for those programs whenever you talk about terms of success. And then you look at teams like Miami, who have recently been getting guys in. How fast are they going to close the gap on those top schools until they're in the top 2 or 3? You'd have to imagine Michigan's going to get another one, if not 2 in soon. Charles Woodson, I think, is eligible next year. That should be a lock. And then in a few years, you have Tom Brady. So I don't know what Ohio State has coming down or USC or Notre Dame. But Miami, they have a lot on the rise. I would imagine Alabama would start having some guys clip in a few years, maybe a decade from now. So I wonder how all that stuff would change. Doesn't seem like a lot whenever you have like 100 years of the NFL and the top college only has 13 players in the Hall of Fame. It's pretty spread out in that term. So anything else you want to hit on the Hall of Fame?
I was happy to see that there wasn't any issue with Polamalu getting in. And with Hutchinson getting in, I thought that was a pretty close draw between him and Faneca.
I've said it before, I thought Faneca was going to get it. I thought Steelers would have both.
I thought when they put Cowher in and they put Polamalu in, I didn't think that Faneca was going to make it. I think he'll probably end up going in a year or 2.
Well, that makes sense. And I hope he doesn't get cut just because they felt they had too many Steelers in.
Well, and that's one of the minor gripes that I have with the Hall of Fame is that I feel like there's this window of, well, we have to fit X number of people in. And when you have so many that you think, like, it's not everyone gets in the Hall of Fame. It's like I feel like it's evolving into where it's going to be this participation trophy as opposed to the celebration of the best players and best best people that represented the game. Because if you're throwing in owners and general managers and coaches and whatnot, if you're throwing those people in, I'm sure there's people that are deserving of that. But if you have your cutoff of however many, then keep it at that. And there's going to be those people that you question, that have to wait a long time, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's when it's boiling down to get the best people, and don't have it be where you split it into these subcategories, and now all of a sudden you're getting like these questionable people who they're getting in, and it's like, are they really deserving of that recognition and that honor?
Well, the one thing that I looked at, I was looking because we talked about this last year, and if I'm correct, I think we had it down to where they weren't even putting linemen in, and based on resume of Pro Bowls, All Pro, playoff appearances, like the stats, pancakes, game started, things like that. I thought Hutchinson and Faneca were both locks. I think, and this is going from memory, I'll have to make sure I have the show notes up to date where we can search for things like this next time. But I thought that Faneca had the slight edge, and maybe he played longer, had a couple more Pro Bowls and things like that. But some of the other guys that they were up against in terms of linemen, the stats weren't close. So if you're looking at it, like you said, putting the best guys in, I would have been a little bit more upset if one of the other guys would have gone in over him. And then it would have really felt like, okay, he didn't get put in because there were already too many Steelers getting in this year. Because I feel like that's a bad look. Like, he's been up before. If you were worried about that, put him in last year. He had the stats last year. There were a couple guys I thought he could have been in over. They put a bunch of defensive backs in, if I remember correctly. Because we did the breakdown looking at stats and all pros and things that were comparable across the different positions. And Faneca easily should have been in last year. So it's just kind of shocking that he didn't make it this year. Was it because you had Polamalu and Bill Cowher? I don't know. That's what it feels like to me, though. I'm happy for Hutchinson. I thought he should have been in. I'm glad he's finally in. I thought him and Faneca both should have made it last year. But, I still want to see Faneca get in because that's a snub. You don't see a lot of guards getting in. So, I hope that's not why either. Maybe it was because Hutchinson played tackle. And then...
but I think you're right. Like, he had a very long, productive career. And I think, it seems like with some players, when they have a very long career, it almost seems like it hurts them. Like, you're almost better off playing a couple years at an all-pro level as opposed to a long time at an all-pro level.
Well, people think I'm joking, well, a couple of my friends, because when Eli Manning retired, I think he's a lock for the Hall of Fame. And everyone's like, well, what point is it just because you played for how many years and you racked up all these stats? Like, the dude has 2 Super Bowls. In terms of, I actually did a list for the show. Whenever you're looking at it now, if you're looking at active players with multiple Super Bowls, Eli retired, that's it. You have Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger. Tom Brady has a ton of Super Bowl appearances, like 9. Roethlisberger has 3. He's 2-1. Russell Wilson has 2. He's 1-1. Eli Manning would have been right there with two wins. That's it, Matt. That's the list. Mahomes now, Nick Foles, they both have wins, Foles and Mahomes. Aaron Rodgers has a win. But other than that, there are no active quarterbacks that are getting to multiple Super Bowls and playing for decades. If you look at who he's up against, Phillip Rivers, would you honestly put Phillip Rivers in over Eli Manning? Eli Manning has stats that are very comparable to Ben Roethlisberger. I think Eli Manning and Ben Roethlisberger should both be in. At what point are you going to say, he went 500? And that was the argument I was trying to make in his favor. At some point, those losing teams are on the GM and the front office, putting players around him that can't win. Because if he's getting to the playoff and he's winning the Super Bowl, that means when he has talent, he's able to get it done. Some of these players have talent. Look at the teams Phillip Rivers had with LaDainian Tomlinson and Antonio Gates and all these Hall of Fame players. Choked. You can't honestly tell me that Eli Manning wouldn't have won a Super Bowl out there. I think he would have. I mean, I don't like the Mannings, but
Hey, Drew Brees couldn't even win with all those guys. So
yeah, notice how he wasn't on my list, Matt? He's made one Super Bowl. He's like the Aaron Rodgers. Get a lot of praise, talk about how awesome you are, play for 30 years. Maybe the Chargers had it right, cutting him early.
wow.
Hey, Matt, don't even argue because the Saints, that year they won the Super Bowl was the cheating year. That's looking very much like the Astros. They had the bounty. They had all that other stuff. Sean Payton was kicked out of the league for a while. Don't you remember? They haven't done anything since, Matt. At least Bill Belichick, when he's cheating, he innovates and comes back with a new scheme, sending people out to record the Bengals sideline, pretending to be film men. You gotta keep cutting. You either gotta cheat all the way till you win
cheat all the way,
6 Super Bowls like Bill Belichick did, or do the Sean Payton thing. Only win one. Now you have a complex legacy. What am I supposed to do if I'm commentating on that, Matt? Who would you take, Drew Brees or Eli Manning, to win a Super Bowl?
Drew Brees. Not even close.
Matt, he hasn't even won one. Eli Manning is so accurate in the clutch that he once threw a ball that got stuck on his guy's helmet. The guy couldn't even drop it. It was stuck on the helmet. He landed and then had a game-winning catch like that.
He must be on acid.
I'm just saying, look it up. I mean, he threw a ball so perfect. Like, Drew Brees could never have thrown that ball. I mean, he threw his guy right into an interference that didn't get called last year. Eli Manning never did that.
But I do think when it comes to some of these Hall of Fame selections, like using the comparison, the prototypical person who gets brought up in this discussion is always the Dan Marino discussion. And I think when you look at, like, Dan Marino doesn't have the Super Bowls, but when you look at it statistically, what he's able to do,
and I think he should be in.
Like over the length of his career, I think like it makes he definitely deserves it. And I think where you have some discussion is that for someone like, take the Super Bowl wins away from Eli Manning, would he be in your mind a lock for the Super Bowl or for the Hall of Fame?
I mean, what are you putting Dan Marino in on? Wins or just stats?
I mean, I'm just saying in general, like when you look at his stats, the everything across his career, I think his numbers for his era put him in that spot, I think.
I mean, if I'm looking at it, I think that Eli, I mean, you have the Super Bowls. If you take them away, he's still top 10 in a lot of categories. He might not be first ballot. He might not be first ballot now. But I mean, like, in terms of stats, you don't play for as long as you do getting those stats if you're not good. Now, whether people want to remember him for the Hall of Fame, which I think they will when they actually look at the stats and things like that, there are a lot of guys that played just as long in the 80s and they don't have the stats. Even his peers, a lot of them, they might have a couple more passing yards here or there, but I mean, if you're top 10 in like 3 or 4 passing categories, you have to put him in. Take away the Super Bowls, he's still going to be top 10 in those categories. He might not be the first the first ballot, but I mean, you're going to put a quarterback in pretty much every class, I would believe, or at least somewhere around there, just because of how the position has focused now.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, even if you put in like Aaron Rodgers because of his stats, and take away his Super Bowl, is he really that much better? Like, what is he doing that's different than Eli Manning? Winning like 2 more games a year. He plays the Lions 2 more times a year. Like, I mean, honestly, Matt, it's like Ben Roethlisberger. He had a couple more wins than Eli each year. He played the Browns twice. Didn't they go like 8 in a row over the Browns at one point? Like, at some point, if your division sucks, you're going to get more wins. So stats at some point, I think, have to matter. I mean, the Giants, they play in the division with the Eagles and Dallas that's out spending everything out there. And the Redskins. There's not really a historical doormat in that division. You have teams that have won. I mean, all of those teams have won the Super Bowl within the past 30 years or so. So a lot of them dynasties. I mean, the Cowboys had a dynasty. Redskins were at that point. Eagles didn't really get there, but they were in the Super Bowl in the same time frame. So all of those teams competing. Of course, he's not going to have as many wins as Ben Roethlisberger that plays the Browns twice a year, and that's just a fact. So I could be non-biased and look at that way. It's almost like, yeah, we play in the Big Ten East or the SEC West. Like, yeah, we're not going to have the same record. Like if you put Rutgers in the Big Ten West or moved maybe Ole Miss to the SEC East, would they have a better record? I mean, Missouri won the SEC East like twice already. Like, yeah, they would. Yeah. So I don't think it's all just wins. I know, was that your high tempo? Do you have anything else for high tempo?
No, I mean, I think we pretty much covered that throughout the Hall of Fame discussion.
I want to give a shout out during high tempo here. First, I have it on the end of the show, but I want to hit it twice. The XFL football season starts out this Saturday. You have 4 games, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. The first one's on ABC at 2 p.m. Saturday. 5 p.m. game is on Fox Saturday. So you're going to have 2 big time networks. Even if you don't pay for cable, go out, get an antenna. You can watch the game for free. Sunday, 2 p.m. Fox. 5 p.m. it's on ESPN. Those are your 4 games. We talked about them having big time networks. You have a chance to see them. If you're missing football, go out and watch them. We're going to be talking about a little bit more at the end of the show here. But we had some big news come out of Michigan State today. Mark Dantonio retired. Matt, this was surprising. Some people have said...
a really good time to just decide to hang it up.
Hey, signing day's tomorrow. I know they have the early period, but to resign at 3 in the afternoon or 2:50 or whatever it was, I don't even know what the exact time, but he resigned.
Yeah, it's when he woke up from his afternoon nap. He's like, you know what? Screw it. We're not going to have a good signing day. I'm out.
They had signs for the basketball game tonight commemorating him as the winningest coach in Michigan State football history. They had like wins. I saw people were tweeting them out. Dantonio told them, yeah, you better not pass those out tonight. And then he went on Twitter and posted his retirement letter. Didn't hold a press conference, didn't tell anyone, just kind of said, you know what, I'm out. And dude, it's such a sleazy move. I know you're being sarcastic, but could you imagine?
Sarcastic. If they were going to end up doing something shady and pushing him out anyhow, quit before they have a chance to tarnish your legacy.
It was the same way I felt about John Beilein last year, because you leave Michigan, the tournament's over in April. You know that NBA teams had talked to you in April. Instead, you waited till after the draft when Michigan had zero chance of bringing in any other coaches because they were all signed. They got lucky hiring Juwan Howard. Like Beilein, for a lot of people being mad at him at Michigan as fans, I 100% understand it. I know a lot of people were happy to see him struggle in Cleveland because of the way he left. D'Antonio's is even worse. Because right now, I mean, they got to be on the call. There's a couple people they're talking about. The 49ers defensive coordinator, he coached at Michigan State to start his career. He's been in the NFL, though, for a pretty long time. Doesn't have head coach experience, to my knowledge. You have Luke Fickell, who's been high on their list and has been rumored to take over after D'Antonio steps down. He has a pretty good class coming into Cincinnati. I don't know if he's going to take that jump. I would assume if he has another big year, he had Cincinnati ranked last year. They were a better team than Michigan State already. I mean, he could be setting himself up for a potential big-time gig. USC is probably going to come open, even though you never know with them. Some other gigs around. I mean, Notre Dame's been rumored with Brian Kelly jumping. There are other gigs that are more prestigious that he could be able to use this season as leverage for. The other one, I know it's going to stink for Pitt fans because I think this might be the most realistic. Pat Narduzzi, the old defensive coordinator at Michigan State. He hasn't really been able to get stuff going at Pittsburgh. You know Michigan State's going to pay more.
You think?
Matt, come on. What are your thoughts on it? Do you think he would leave?
Well, it would be a very Pitt move for them to lose him at that point.
In February. Let's be honest. Like, I don't think they would. I mean, if it happened next year, no big deal, because it would probably happen right after the season, before signing day, so they would know. But I'm saying it would be very Pitt if it happened next week.
I just have a hard time believing that he would leave.
Hey, maybe you're right. I don't know. I just know that those are the rumors that are flying right now. They have.
I mean, when you look at Michigan State, what is it? Unless they threw an insane amount of money that I don't know that they would do. What I don't know. What would be more appealing going to Michigan State, because you're going to battle the same problems at Michigan State trying to compete against Ohio State and Michigan that he does staying at Pitt and competing with Ohio State and Penn State for recruits within the state, you know?
It's not even recruiting. Pitt has a much easier chance to the championship game for the ACC. I mean, like that division, their division's pretty bad. So you're leaving what is the equivalent of the Big Ten West to go to the Big Ten East. Like, it's not like they're playing in the Coastal where they have to play Clemson and Florida State every year. Like, you're in the easier division. Why would you jump unless he had just connections and he wanted to be at that program? I don't know. I don't know if he would leave. I don't know what they're going to do. I think they named Mike Tressel as interim coach right now. I mean, you have to be scrambling. Maybe he told his guys, like, hey, I'm going to step down to give you guys one more year. I'm going to protect you. They said something about him maybe sticking around the program, kind of like what Urban Meyer did. I don't know how legit that is or if that's just some type of contract. But, Matt, he waited to get his retention bonus. It was $4.3 million. He earned it on January 15th. He probably waited for that check to cash at the end of the month.
And took it Brown, take note.
He went right to his bank today and was like, "Oh, it's in. All right, let's go ahead. Let's get this done. Let me get on my Twitter."
See, that's the man that knows how to cash it.
It's crazy. I mean, for the Big Ten, it actually probably makes things a lot better because the Big Ten East was already a gauntlet as it is. I don't know how any new coach is going to look at that program and say, okay, we have to play Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State every year. Like, let's just wait a little bit. Maybe another job will come open. Like when Scott Frost jumped to Nebraska, Matt, he literally looked at it and probably thought, oh, it's either Wisconsin or Iowa, and they're not even good the same years usually. Like, you only have to get by one team. It wasn't like he's looking at, oh, I got 3 programs I have to beat. I mean, like Lane Kiffin just did that with Ole Miss, and I mean, I guess you could say Mike Leach did that when he jumped out of Washington State to go to the SEC West, where you have Alabama, LSU, and Auburn. I mean, that's just as crazy. So maybe they could theoretically land a big-time coach, but not right now. Not at this time. This season's almost going to be dead in the water. There were the lawsuits that were coming at Michigan State. I would imagine, and I don't want to get any slander or anything out there, but if you look at the lawsuits, the timing is too perfect. I wonder if his decision is tied to that. And I wonder if a bombshell is going to come out. Because he had his deposition. They sued him saying that in the latest lawsuit from Blackwell, one of his previous assistants that he fired, Blackwell said that he had recruiting violations because he used a businessman to get parents of recruits jobs at venture capitalist firms. And then he said that before he was officially on staff, he would take him to recruiting visits in Detroit. Like that he wasn't supposed to be at. He would come. And then Dantonio in his deposition said that he would bring him with him, but he would leave him in the car. Could you imagine if you called me and you're like, hey, Richie, let's go. We're going to go on a recruiting trip. We get there and you're like, yeah, cuz you have to wait in the car. I'd be like,
I'll be right back. I gotta go get this free meal.
like 8 hours later, I'm just sitting out there. I'm like, man, this is a long trip. Because those recruiting trips aren't like 15 minutes. You're like hanging out. I mean, Harbaugh's having sleepovers, so they take forever.
That would be the greatest burn. Oh, I'll be right back. I got this free trip.
Yeah, like, hey, thanks for riding the train with me. I didn't really have anyone to talk to, but you're going to have to sit this one out, buddy. Not allowed to go in with me. You're going to have to wait. I'll be out soon. And Detroit, nonetheless, Matt. So, like, you can walk around the lot to do in the winter, probably for recruiting months. I guess it could have been the summer. I don't know.
Sit here. Keep the car safe.
It's crazy. I honestly don't know. It's going to be a huge shakeup for the Big Ten this year. I mean, it's not like Michigan State's been competing for a few years, but wow. What a way to kill your legacy. What a way to kill your legacy. Like I said, it's almost parallel to what Beeline did, hurting your legacy. People understand if you're going to leave. Just announce it a little bit earlier. Help your team out. Like, I understand you're getting that check. Announce it January 16th. Unless he literally waited for it to show up in his bank.
You better make sure.
Hey, Mike Leach, you didn't remember? He always fights for his money. The Texas Tech owes him. They'll never pay him. I hope they're cursed until they do pay him. Like, they pay him and then, like, they lost the basketball championship. Like, I would love it if they just gave him a check and then they won a national championship the next year. Just so you can be like, look, you had the curse of Mike Leach on your program. So, I don't know. Anything else you have on that? Like, I just don't even know from a coaching perspective, like, how you would let your team down like that.
I don't know either. It blows my mind because as far as, like, the coach in me just makes, like, you try to get kids, you try to hold kids accountable, and you want them to be honest with you. And I'm thinking of the kids that are potentially going to commit to Michigan State tomorrow, thinking that was going to be their coach, and now there's a lot of things up in the air with that program. Like, that really sets them back.
Like I said, I don't know how someone could come in and bring in, like, a culture and have that set up when you have to compete against those big three programs in that division. Like, you're not going to get top recruits from Ohio. You're not going to get the top recruits from Michigan. You're not going to get the top recruits from Pennsylvania or one of the other neighboring states because everyone else has a culture there. I mean, you're going to come in, you're going to have to recruit Chicago? How many athletes really come out of Chicago for football? I don't know. Like, it's going to be bad all around, I would think, because of the timing and trying to get someone that has some ties to that area. That's why I think they go like Luke Fickell, because he coached at Ohio State, didn't have a good year as interim. He's been at Cincinnati. He's had some success, has the recruiting grounds in Ohio. Very similar. He has, like, basically the exact same resume as Dantonio did years ago. I think he was even at Cincinnati. So I think they throw the boat at him. I don't think he makes the move now. If he did, that would be... but it is a step up. It is a Power 5, so maybe they could get something done if Michigan State wants to pay Cincinnati like a huge buyout or something, but they just paid Dantonio $4 million. Like, how much money can they have laying around? I know the Big Ten gets, like, tons of money or whatever, but at some point, like, you have to be out of money. I don't know. Anything else you have for football, college football, or any college sports?
No, I don't. I'm good.
I was looking to see if there was anything else coming out of it, but there's nothing really coming out. I guess he had a press conference around 6:30 or so where he came out and tried to say that it's not for football, like, just because of the time away, and he wants to, like, connect and remember the relationships he built at Michigan State. I just think the timing's so weird. Like, signing day's tomorrow. I know you already signed a bunch of your guys, but, like, that's usually the celebration day where everyone's on Twitter. All the people you signed in December, you're still going to be showing their highlights, sharing them. Like, hey, this is our part of our commit class. This is everyone that we're bringing in. And instead, it's like, nope. Do a 180 now. Because, I mean, I would imagine their graphics are done, Matt. Usually the head coach is on the graphics. I know they have at least something, like his name. Even if it's just his name, they have some connection to like the program as a whole. They have to redo all those now.
Not necessarily.
You can just Photoshop. Florida State Photoshops a lot of stuff like their MLK tribute.
Why you gotta bring that up?
Because it just had that holiday a couple weeks ago. I forgot to mention it then. I felt like it fit right in.
No, you didn't bring it. Was horrible.
You just copy and paste, get the new coach's head, put it right on Dantonio.
It's not any better. It's like that department as a whole could really afford to be upgraded drastically, and putting people in those positions to because let's face it, those media departments really can affect recruiting, and they can pull things, and it's like you just constantly miss the mark on it.
Oh, I know. I've seen typos. I mean, I've heard things from other programs. Even Michigan, like one of the recruits said that he withdrew because they sent him a thank you card for an event he didn't even go to. So like everyone makes mistakes, but at some point you got to be on your game. And things like this, I feel like really have to hurt the program. If you're not on the same page and a coach quits right before, I mean, I guarantee they've been working on this for the past 6 months. This is like the number one thing they do.
Well, and I'll take it a step further. It's not just Dantonio retiring, but it's all of the coaches and all of the support staff that go into that now have their careers in jeopardy, because chances are, unless it's a move where they're just going to promote one of the coaches from within and they're going to maintain, like they're going to retain a lot of those same coaches, there's a lot of families that are going to be affected by that, by the choice of Dantonio at this point.
Oh yeah, 100%. So we'll hit on this next week. Signing day, we'll do our signing day wrap-up show next Tuesday. So make sure you download this from iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. We do it live on Facebook Tuesday nights at 9, so you can always check it out there as well. Last topic, like I said, XFL. I hit on it earlier. 4 games this weekend, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. The game start at 2. Saturday game is on ABC at 2, Fox Sunday at 2. Check them out at least a little bit. See what you want to support. I've seen a lot of people talking about how the league's down and how they're already worse than the AAF, which I don't get because the AAF had no support. They didn't have big-time network support. So I'm really hoping that this works out. And like I said, they make an XFL video game where you're not trying to get trading cards like Madden. That's all I want. Anything else you got for the final bell?
Yeah, just go to our website, southboundsports.com. Check out the stuff. Check out the store. We got some good stuff in there, and continue to support us. We appreciate it. Yeah,
thanks for listening. And like Matt said, go to southboundsports.com. Follow us on social. We'll be getting some stuff worked out for this off season, getting ready for, got the combine coming up. We have signing day tomorrow, which will be today whenever you hear this, most likely. And then you'll have the NFL draft, hopefully the whole XFL season. We'll get some new listeners through that. So tell your friends, make sure you subscribe. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.